Hello, folks. It looks like there's Ken, Quentin, Cammy, Rick, and Karen on, and Jane, who I think is Jane, my wife. So we'll give it a few more minutes and see if anybody shows up. Otherwise, Jane gets her own presentation.
You always pack them in like this, Ken?
What was that, Quentin?
I was just wondering if you always pack them in like this, Ken.
When I did the wolf one, I had several hundred.
Yeah. I can never tell. This time of year especially.
I think the EA was written so clearly, nobody really has any questions.
Well, it's been talking, I don't know, maybe it is inherently a topic that people get, Ken. I don't know. That's an interesting map. I've not seen, I was going to mention there, I've not seen that map before, I don't think.
Yeah, that's the Intermountain Grassland one.
Yeah.
That's going to be our biggest challenge, I think, is coming up with prices and things for those.
Yeah. Yeah.
How long do you think we should give it, Quentin?
You know, Ken, I think that maybe wait till 10:15 and we don't have anybody chiming on then, and maybe 20. Yeah, I don't think it's, people are busy and including staff. I don't think it's something that needs to be drugged. I don't think we need to wait beyond that, Ken.
Okay.
I don't know. It's been interesting. You know, I've touched on this topic multiple times. Stock growers, Farm Bureau, you know, and others, landowner groups, and a couple of conservation groups too, at least in one-on-ones. Maybe I shouldn't say groups, just individuals. And it really hasn't been a conversation of questions, really, Ken.
Yeah.
You know, Hank has received some, you know, some inputs too, and the same sort of stuff. Just people may be saying good idea or not a good idea, but again, not so much questions. So I don't know. Maybe it'll be a pretty low, at least through this public comment period. Maybe it'll be a pretty low engagement. Have we got any public comments submitted?
You know, I don't know. Tammy, do you know?
We've had one.
Yes. Is this a YouTube Zoom or login, Cami, or both? Or
Both folks can watch it on YouTube or they can log in. The info's on the website.
okay. I shouldn't say I participated. I attended last night's what am I trying to say? The elk planning meeting last night in Helena.
Oh,
You know, some good discussion, some good back and forth, but I think only 5. It sounds like the wisdom one was fairly well attended.
yeah, I think there was 20 folks at that one, is what Lindsay said.
Thanks, both of you, for taking a look, and Cami for getting the supplemental stuff to Missy on those commission postings earlier today.
Yeah, I think they finally got done.
Yeah, they did. It was just you know, we got some folks that are out for one reason or another, and it just the inevitable, just a lot of detail there, and it seemed like every step we took, we grabbed half the details. Not to throw a stone, that's just what happens. But I think again, everybody rallied there at the end, and I think it looks good.
Yeah.
Can you see the YouTube, Cami? I mean, can you see the attendees on the YouTube?
I will look.
That's a neat map too, Ken.
Yeah, Rick did a really good job with putting these all together.
Can you see the attendees?
I will look. All right, it looks like I was the only one looking at it.
Was that right?
Yeah.
Huh. Must mean everything is good, Ken.
Yep, I think so.
Can you scroll to the sage to the, or this is the mixed grassland priority?
Yeah, this is the sage.
Okay,
So the darker yellows are the core areas and the lighter
Yeah.
yellow is the general habitat.
you know, and in all three of those in sequence, that's a pretty good series of maps.
Yeah, and I don't have it here, but there's one in EA that is all of them overlapped.
Is that right?
Yeah, so if you take the sage, the mixed grass, and then the intermountain valleys, and then we've got the riparian and floodplain, quite a bit of the state is covered.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a nice series.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't put the one that shows them all.
No, that's fine. No, it looks good. That's just a really nice series. It's well done.
Hey, Ken, there's one question in chat that says, if landowners have a lease, will they also be eligible for block management?
Yeah, so if landowners have a lease, yes, they would be eligible for block management.
No, that's fine. And we did just have somebody join.
Want to run through it? Ken? Yeah, it looks like we got someone chiming in.
All right, I will run through this real quick. Just to give a quick overview of this program. If folks are on the Zoom, you can type questions in the chat. Or Cammie, do you want to tell them how you ask questions?
Yes, you can type it in the chat or you can raise your hand. It looks like you're probably on a computer, so you should be able to just click the raise hand button.
Okay. So real quick, we'll give a quick briefing and then any questions. So what we're doing tonight is just a briefing on a program that Montana Fish, Life and Parks is proposing, which is a habitat conservation lease program, where we're proposing to lease up to 500,000 acres over the next 5 years through 30 or 40-year term leases. The leases are going to be focused on priority habitats. So we've identified 5 priority habitats that are important for different wildlife species and are kind of the most critical in the state. And so we're going to be focusing on those. What I have on the map right now shows the first one, which is the Sagebrush Grassland habitats. The dark yellow on this map is the core areas, sagebrush core areas, so that'll be our highest priority. The lighter yellow are the general habitat, and the little green up there by Glasgow, right in here, is a migratory habitat. The next one is mixed grass prairie habitat. Grassland habitat is amongst the most threatened in the country. Montana has a pretty pretty diverse and intact grassland remaining, and so this will be one of our priorities. There's 4 different species of grassland birds that are being considered or have been considered for listing under Endangered Species Act, which highlights the importance of this habitat. The next one is our wetland grasslands. So what you're seeing here is just a map showing all of the wetlands. A lot of these are prairie pothole wetlands. Wetlands are obviously very important for a number of wildlife species and the grasslands around them, the uplands around them. So that'll be a high priority, as well as the next one is intermountain valleys. So these are the grassland valleys in between mountain ranges, primarily in the central and western part of the state. These ones, obviously, a number of threats from development to conversion, things like that. And then the final one is riparian and floodplain habitat. So again, our leasing program is, the goal is to lease for 30 to 40 year periods up to 500,000 acres of these particular priority habitats. For the program, we've kind of decided that for a lease, at least 50% or the majority of the habitat within the lease has to be one of those priority areas. But we recognize habitat isn't homogeneous, so other pieces that can make up part of a landowner's ownership would be considered, particularly if it's intact native habitat. So, for example, you might have a sagebrush habitat that's 70% sagebrush and 30% breaks woodland habitat. That whole parcel would be eligible for lease under the sagebrush payment. We would also entertain converted habitats that the landowner intends to restore. So a lease proposal could include a disturbed habitat that a landowner intends to restore, and we would work with the landowner on how that would be accomplished. The terms of the lease are focused on ensuring the habitat remains intact, which means for most leases, surface disturbance activities would be restricted. And that includes things like tillage of intact habitats, housing and building developments, energy developments, things like that would be restricted or prohibited. And also things like wetland draining and targeted herbicide treatments on native vegetation. Other activities, what we sort of consider as normal agriculture activities like livestock grazing and noxious weed management would be allowed and continue as they're being managed right now. For all of these leases, some public access is also required. There's a formula included in the environmental assessment that describes that, and basically it's amount of access is determined based on the size of the leased parcel. If there's specific question about that, we can answer that one. Terms of, so it's pretty simple. Then the payment for the leases will be a fixed rate per acre. That rate will be paid upfront for the 30-year or 40-year term. It'll be basically the rate will be 5 to 10% of the fee value. And the fee value will be determined based on an average fee value for different habitat types in different parts of the state. We're still working on refining that and what the actual dollars will be. But as an example, as an example, the average fee value of grazing lands in Northeast Montana appears to be around $650 an acre. So payment for the 30-year lease would be 5 to 10% of that, or $33 to $65 an acre, depending on what the final percentage that we land on, and that would be for the 30-year period. Other habitat types, for example, river bottom riparian habitat, may be considerably more than that, and so the fixed rate for that type of habitat would be reflected in that. Another thing, the easements, I'm sorry, the agreements, the lease agreements would be recorded with the deed at the county courthouse, and the leases would run with the land. So what that means is the property would be bound to the lease terms for the length of the agreement, even if the land changes hands during that lease period. And then for each proposal that meets the minimum requirements, we would do due diligence to include a site visit, a title search, habitat mapping, and we have to complete a checklist EA, do a public meeting. Ideally, if we have multiple leases in the same area, we do a batched public meeting, and overall assessment. If the demand for the leases is greater than the resources that we have, we would prioritize projects based on overall habitat value. So for example, if it's in core sage grouse habitat, that would be a higher priority than non-core area. Habitats that are blocked up, forming bigger blocks in close proximity to other protected lands would also receive a higher priority, things like that. There is a provision to allow an out of the lease, whether it's by default on the lease terms or by simply wanting to get out. But a landowner that does that will have to pay a prorated amount for the remaining years left on the lease, plus a penalty of 25% of the total amount they received for liquidated damages. So there is a way out, but there's a cost to that. So in a nutshell, this is what the proposed program is. And I'm saying proposed at this point because there's an environmental assessment that's now out and we're seeking comments on that. We'll weigh comments and come up with a final program proposal following the comment period. If the decision is to proceed as proposed, we would look to put out a request for proposals to landowners starting on August 1st for about a 45-day period. Our initial focus is going to be on the prairie habitats, primarily in eastern Montana, the sagebrush and grasslands, like in this map and this map. And that's mainly to get our, kind of get the bugs worked out on what will be hopefully fairly more consistent approach before we tackle some of the more complex intermountain grasslands in the western Montana. One other thing is all the projects have to have approval by the Fish and Wildlife Commission. Typically with land projects, our commission approves projects one at a time, project by project. But because of the size and scope of this proposal, we're asking the commission to give us a programmatic approval for leases that meet the sideboard described in the final environmental assessment. So if the commission approves this programmatic approach, then they won't have to take each one one at a time, and would give us permission to continue with these leases up to the amount they give us. So just today, the commission proposal was also put on the website. So we're seeking comment on the environmental assessment, which is looking at analysis of this program and impacts of the program. And then we're also seeking comment on whether the commission should provide programmatic approval or do individual approval or something in between. So that is the program we're talking about. One other thing people have asked is this meant to replace our other habitat programs, which involve doing perpetual conservation easements or fee title acquisitions? And the answer to that is no, those are still available as well. This is just another tool to promote habitat conservation, and particularly in really high priority habitat types, in addition to easements and acquisitions. So with that, are there any questions? And if you have a question, you can type it in the chat or raise your hand, I think, right, Cami?
Yes, that's right. And there is a follow-up from the question earlier about block management in the leases, and it was, can it be on the same parcel?
Yes, yes. So the leases are intended to conserve that habitat, which means no surface disturbance of the habitat. There is an access requirement as part of the lease, but the landowner and that land that's covered by the lease can be also enrolled in block management, and that block management can be used to help manage the access required by the lease, in addition to what other access a landowner wants to provide. Anything else? So I'm going to share one more. If you haven't found it, the environmental assessment is on the FWP website. You can either follow the directions here or write down this link to find it on the website. You go to the homepage. At the top of the homepage, there's a banner that says news and notices. If you click on that, you'll see a option for public notices. Click on that and then scroll down. And this one was published on June 14th. The public notices are in chronological order, so that's the easiest way to find it. Anything else? I'm not seeing anything. Cami, are you seeing anything coming in?
Nope.
All right. Well, if anybody has questions, feel free to call me. Please comment on the EA and the commission process. I think with that, we'll call it a night.
Thanks, Ken and Cami, both of you.
Yep. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
All right. You guys too.